thoughts about why people have such a hard time, why we have such a hive mind, why people have such a hard time thinking for themselves. Honestly, I think it's like there are lots of benefits to living in societies. The synergy of working as a team to create stuff, and just everything that you get. When you live in a densely populated area where everyone speaks the same language, you could have the sewer systems that have everything gets more efficient, and so we're able to have higher standards of living than if everyone was on a different page, everyone thought different things. It's kind of like herding cats, If everyone's in a pack moving, the same speaking the same language, using the same currency, operating under the same laws, things work very smoothly. So I think there's an incentive, and I would imagine that's the same with tribes. So there's an incentive to go with the flow. And it's the incentive of having an easier life where everything is actually easier. Now, it's very scary if going with the flow means Hitler's in charge. I know it sounds like people might say, well, because I am making an analogy that we're moving in an authoritarian direction as a society. I mean, without a doubt in my mind, you could be, this is my opinion, I'm not saying it's a fact. To equate this to what the direction we're going, to equate that to the same direction or the same place, moving toward the same place as Hitler and the Nazis, or the Soviet Union, the communists in Russia that killed millions of people, tens of millions of people, Stalin, Lenin. It doesn't seem that crazy to me to think that human nature, people think that human nature has changed in 50 years, that humans have been these barbarians for so long, people want power, but in the last 50 years or 60 years, people don't want power anymore, and everyone's really benevolent. Well, I don't think that's true, and I think it's hard I guess I'm just kind of speaking about why I think it's hard for people to think for themselves, because when I look at information about what's going on with the pandemic, I really can't even fathom. I just don't understand. Like, the CDC released numbers. They put the mortality rate for ages 0 to 19 at the survival rate at 99.99998 or something like that. The mortality rate, so the opposite of that would be the mortality rate is 0.00002 or something. That's, and all the schools in the nation are shut down, and everyone's just like, yeah, for sure, yeah. I don't understand, it makes so little sense that I'm trying to find an understanding of how people could think that these things are reasonable. The CDC has on its website talking about face masks. They don't work for influenza, which is, I believe, is that a coronavirus? It's definitely a virus. Face masks, from my understanding, were not designed for viruses. They were designed for bacteria, so that surgeons can wear them, so the bacteria doesn't go into an open surgery or whatever they're doing. They don't stop viruses. The CDC has on its website, and if anyone wanted to, leave a comment, I would just post it. I've posted it before. About respiratory etiquette. You can look that up on your own, probably. And it's kind of crazy that a lot of things that you want to look up, there would be evidence against lockdowns. Google will put the websites at the top will be all fact-checking websites that are privately owned websites with opinions. And then the information you're looking for, Google will bury it. That's kind of scary. And if you look for it on YouTube, you might find the video of doctors saying something that's helpful for you to make a decision and try to understand the severity of COVID. And then you look for it a week later, and YouTube removed it for violating their terms of service. These are doctors saying things that their personal experiences, but that's censored. You're not allowed to see that on YouTube because that went against the World Health Organization or the CDC. I forgot which one. But anything that goes against the World Health Organization. And by the way, the World Health Organization, the third largest funder is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and that's the highest private funder. It's really scary how if you have billions of dollars, George Soros, these people, you just you start something like, let's say you want to win over African Americans. That just comes to my mind, just as it could be anything, whatever type of people or group or anything. But I like that example for some reason. Simple, keep it simple. Let's say you wanted to sell socialism to African Americans, because that's how they do. It's like, we want to do this to this, and we want to like get this message across to this populace, right? So whoever it is, or let's say you want to, it's like the Patriot Act. It's like, we want to take away people's Fourth Amendment rights, I believe is what it was. Like, you know, we want to take away people's privacy, be able to spy on them. So that's unconstitutional. How do we do that? Well, you create an act called the Patriot Act. It's the exact opposite of what you're trying to do is what you call it. So if you want socialism, you call it like the Freedom Act. You know, you want my example before was going to be like, let's say you want to sell socialism to African Americans. Well, you call it, well, really that's what BLM is. I mean, the one of the founders of, I'm not talking about social justice. I think there is a problem with that. You know, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is people will use real problems like inequality and institutional, you know, what's happened to African Americans is in America. I'm not even going to get into that. But those are real things. Those are real, actual problems. And what you'll do, the way to infiltrate that is, so you take an actual problem, like police on African Americans, or something that happened with, like George Floyd, for example, and then you turn that energy into like, now we're going to sell them socialism. And then BLM, one of the founders, is on videotape saying, we are trained socialists. Yes. Something, I might have a word wrong there, but they're socialists. So it's really kind of crazy. And if you look at Bill Gates and Bill and Melinda Gates, it's just crazy how they work. So a lot of these, like George Soros, so you could just fund these people, and there's so much manipulation going on that's really hard to track. But I'm getting off on a tangent. But getting back to COVID, which is more of a solid ground that has numbers, it's like 92%, 94%, what was it? It goes 94% on the CDC website of people who tested positive for COVID. And there's controversy about that test too. Doctors have definitely said that test is not capable of accurately testing for COVID. Elon Musk just got 4 tests in 2 days for COVID. 2 came back positive and 2 came back negative. And other people have had a lot of nonsense things. But this is all anecdotal evidence, so I'm not even going to talk about it. But there's a lot of anecdotal evidence to say that test is definitely iffy. But even without that anecdotal evidence, talking about on the CDC website, I think it was 92%, might have been 94% of people who died from having COVID had 2.6, I believe, it might have been 2.7, I think it was 2.6 comorbidities, meaning like if you have stage 4 cancer and lung disease, and you die while you have COVID from cancer, they mark that as a COVID death. Or if you have some like diabetes, type 1 diabetes, and you're gonna like, you're dying basically, or anything else that could kill you, and you die of that, but you had COVID, you tested positive for COVID at the time of death, they mark that as a COVID death. Can you imagine how insane that is? That's like, your mom's in the hospital, it's like, I'm so sorry. And these are real people's lives. That's why it's hard to talk about it, because people actually do die. So I'm not trying to be insensitive, but if people are going to manipulate those deaths, it is what it is. And so it's like Colin, let's say, Colin, your mom died of COVID. Really? She was in the hospital for cancer for a long time. She's been battling cancer. Yeah, but she died of COVID. Like, what do you mean? It's like, well, no, she died of cancer, but she had COVID. It's like disrespectful. That's not me doing that. That's what doctors are doing, and there's a financial incentive. Influenza has fallen to 2% of its normal numbers. 98% less cases of the flu globally in 2020, I believe. I forgot the time frame. I think it was 2020. Than before. Is it possible that if you had the flu, they just marked it as COVID? I mean, that is insane. 98% less. And you can read on a website. It's just crazy, like the arguments that websites will put up. And my whole point of this is to just encourage people to think for themselves. And kind of, I walk around, I see people running up a mountain by themselves without a soul inside, wearing a face mask, and I'm like, I just don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me. I can't imagine doing something that made so little sense. You know, it's like, what are you doing? Like, what are you, like, who are you protecting? The CDC has information on their website that says masks don't work for influenza, which is a virus. And I can post that. Nature did a study. I don't know if it was Nature, actually. Nature.com has a website, or that is a website. They have an article about, I believe it was 2 studies that were done. It might have been 1, where they had a face mask on people for 30 minutes and no detectable, might have been not significant amounts, but I think it was almost no detectable coronavirus particles were shed in 30 minutes on a face mask. And if you got it, and I can post this too, the CDC numbers for death under 50 is like 99.998, something like that. It's just, and then I look around and people are like legitimately going to be losing their businesses, legitimately going to be losing their jobs, falling into poverty. They had a whole plan for life. That's not going to happen. What people had dreamed of is not going to happen. It's like, and there's also evidence, there's articles that they've done studies. This is not anecdotal evidence. This is actual evidence of studies, and I can post all this for whoever wants to know which part. But that the lockdowns, people who locked down, like that I didn't read too much about that. I just kind of glanced over them, the studies, how they were done. But they compared, places that locked down to places that didn't, and there was like no difference. And then just to watch what's going to happen is just so. It's like to say that people who want lockdowns are people who care about people. I can't. It's like I find that hard to believe. It's like no, we care about people, so we're gonna destroy everyone's lives. It's like, oh, see, I care about people, and that really hurts me to hear that, because I'm gonna be driving around seeing more and more homeless people, and more homeless people, and then more and more people slipping down into poverty, more and more people killing themselves, more and more people having drug and alcohol problems, domestic violence. So that's already all happening. And what happens when people fall into poverty? Everything gets worse. In poverty areas, things are worse. And that's like the direction that we're going in. And then, so it's just hard for me. I guess I'm just saying, it's like, oh, I'm doing this and I believe in this. It's like, do you even know what you're saying? But I guess I'm just thinking about why it's hard for people and why people have a tendency to not think for themselves with their own brain. It's like, I think we should do this. It's like, why do you think that? It's like, because this corrupt official told me. And I can't prove any corruption, so I'm not going to say that. But because I believe this because this official told me. It's like, okay. Like, what if a different official told you something different? Would you believe them? Because different officials are telling you. Different doctors who run clinics are saying different things. So would you believe them? It's like, no. Well, you're like, look, honestly, I'm just scared and I want to do whatever is official because because that makes me feel comfortable, because then I won't be ostracized by the group and no one will be mad at me. And it's just a hard thing for me to see people go that route, because I think it's just a bad route for this human spirit. And there's group communities, going back to the group idea, we work in social environments, and when you don't fit into the group, you could lose your job, and then you could get a bad name. And then they paint things as conspiracy theories. I understand. I mean, once you start to question everything, things can start to get out of control. But for instance, if I said that there was a billionaire with an island where they had sex with children, and Bill Clinton flew there 26 times, and all these elite people were friends with him, and apparently they had a lot of footage of illegal sexual acts with children going on, and that like he's gonna get arrested, but if he got arrested, he'd probably either commit suicide or be killed. Really, he'd be murdered and have it look like a suicide. You'd be like, dude, that is insane. That is a conspiracy. Like I don't even want to go down that route. You sound crazy right now. But that already happened, So I think it's just hard and there's Jeffrey Epstein, obviously. It's hard for people to because once Jordan Peterson's talked about this, once you are betrayed, or once a part of your environment that you thought you could rely on and depend on, once that falls down. So in a betrayal example, it'd be like, you think you could trust your spouse and they cheat on you, right? And you're like, oh my God, if I got that wrong, what else do I have wrong, If I thought this was true and it's not, what else do I think is true that's not? So your world can fall apart when things that you thought, you're like, if politicians are lying to us. I mean, keep in mind, Hitler was an official. Everyone in Hitler's group was an official. Stalin was an official. He was an official authority. These people, their slogans weren't like, death to the Jews. They were like, a greater world, It's like, of course their slogans are like positive things. It's like, stay inside, stay safe, wear a mask. And then you like, sure, yeah, I just want to see the evidence and the studies. And then you look at the studies and you're like, yeah, this doesn't work. And it's like, everyone wake up, because there's these studies out, and then no one wants to hear it. And then they'll censor doctors who say that. They're like, well, no one's saying that. And they're removing doctors who say that stuff. And you're like, what is going on? And it's weird. And everyone's like, I don't want to know. And I was really kind of asking myself, kind of trying to answer the question, like, why don't people want to know? And I think it's because it would make you, if things you believed in, it was part of what I was saying about what Jordan Peterson said. If something you believed in falls apart and it turns out not to be true, it's kind of scary, because you have to question everything, and then that could be time consuming. And if you sit on a chair and the bottom falls out, it makes you like, well, I wonder if another chair the bottom's gonna fall. Takes energy. And another reason I think is just because people want to go with the flow, because we have kind of like economies of scale. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it, but there's efficiencies of working socially and being part of a group. And I don't think people want to. I think we're kind of programmed to go with those efficiencies, because it really does create a higher standard of living. And when you're part of the group, but it's really disheartening for me to see so many people just do what they're told. And it's kind of scary, because that's really how evil happens, because the Nazis were just doing what they're told. And that was a common defense in the Nuremberg trials. They're like, we were just doing we were following orders. And that's what everyone's fucking doing right now. Following orders, Like, why are you following them? I don't know. Just trying to be respectful of, well, what if you're just trying to be respectful of something really bad? Well, and you might want to ask, why would there be an incentive? I personally think that they're trying to destroy the economy. You could look at Justin Trudeau. He already made a video. Now that the economy's collapsed, it's a great opportunity to reshape the economy with a new economy that addresses, and whenever you're going to do something bad, you disguise it as something good. You think Hitler came out and said what he's trying to do? No, he's talking about a great new world. So now we're going to have a great new world where there's less inequality. What are they trying to say? They're going to bring in socialism. They're going to bring in communism. These are the things that allow people to acquire immense power. It's just whoever's in charge. Hitler was democratic socialist. Communism, which probably killed more people than Hitler, was communism. I mean, Russian communism probably would be the most notable. And so that's what I think's happening. But because a lot of people are like, well, why? I just wouldn't expect. And then you have to understand that, like, people, not everyone's a good person, especially people who fight their entire life to get to positions of power, tend to like power, believe it or not. It wasn't by accident that they just floated to the top because they're so competent. It's because they wanted to be there. They positioned themselves to be there. And they're not maybe so as benevolent as you may think. That's my opinion. But if everyone's thinking for themselves, then I don't think we could get into a terrible situation. But it seems like that's not the case, and we are walking toward that potentially bad situation. But so that's basically it. But I think a lot of people are beginning to open their eyes, so we'll see. If this made you question something, then good. And I'd be happy to provide any information to back up what I was saying. And if I can't back it up, then forget about it, because then forget I said it. Don't believe it. But if I can, then it is what it is.